Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of X-Men the Animated Series Season 3, Episode 8, No Mutant is an Island. This originally aired September 21st, 1996. So this actually first premiered of Season 5 because of animation issues, so they had to push it back. So they've put it now on Disney Plus in Season 3 where it belongs in the timeline of this story with Jean. Before I jump into this review, hit that sub button. This X-Men channel is going to have everything X-Men, whether it's reviewing figures, comics, shows, you name it. And if you're on TikTok, make sure to check out the YouTube channel and subscribe there. So the title of this episode, No Mutant is an Island, is a play on No Man is an Island, meaning that no man is totally self-sufficient. We all rely on others in a way. And this is shown as the theme with Scott in this episode, that he is ready to leave the X-Men, be by himself at the end of the day. He comes back and goes with the X-Men, who he also relies on, and he realized that him helping others also gave him that motivation to join people that he also relies on, and that motivation they have together as people. It's also interesting in this episode, the intro music is a little different, a different key it's in, and there's new clips are showing. I still prefer the old one. What's fascinating though is that the episode opens where they're reflecting on Jean leaving, and they all think basically that she's dead, but there's a hope there, right? Like Jubilee can't believe that she's dead. She can't process it, but is it totally confirmed? I think that's what makes it even harder for them. And Beast, though, is reading his own poetry about Jean. And I thought that was really cool that he wasn't quoting anyone this time, that we heard like an original poem from Beast. I thought that was a nice touch. But you see Cyclops is not taking it well. He snaps at Professor X. He's like, I'm sick of being den mother to a bunch of quibbling children. Sick of caring. And it really sums up Scott perfectly in his role in the X-Men, being a den mother. I thought that was a great line. And he gives in the uniform. And what that does is it sets up a full-on Scott episode. And he's really at rock bottom here because he's thinking about the happy moment when he proposed to Jean last season. And it doesn't help that he's sitting on a bus while he's thinking of this, and a kid points a gun at him and says, "Die, mutant." And then his mother makes it seem like that would be so offensive to call a human a mutant. But this is where Scott goes to McNeil Orphanage, where he grew up, and he reunites with Sarah, who he was at the orphanage with. Now, on the news in the background, we first hear the name mention of Zebediah Kilgrave, who is the Purple Man, and he's giving out scholarships to these kids, but he's also helped Sarah out because he's donated money, and he's taken on some of the kids. Now, it's interesting because the most recent version of Kilgrave we have seen is in Jessica Jones, of David Tennant playing the character, but this is a very different version you see in that show compared to this show, where this really leans into the Purple Man aspect of it. I also like during this that we see moments of Cyclops' past where he wasn't being adopted. People were not liking his powers, and that awful feeling he had as a child of feeling rejected like that. Now, when the fire starts here, I love when they run together up the stairs, Scott and Sarah, and there's always these funny animations when characters are running in the show, and this might top it for me, where Sarah's just flailing her arms, really funny, running up the stairs. But this is where we meet Rusty, who has the power of fire. He's basically Pyro, and we learn he was adopted by Kilgrave 2 days prior, and he's like, "Don't let me go back there." He literally says he has a torture chamber in his basement. I just think it's crazy that Scott and Sarah wouldn't look into this more. And even though Sarah's like, "Oh no, this kid's known to lie and stuff," it's something that's so specific that if a kid said that to you, you'd probably want to double check on that. And it just makes Sarah such an idiot this whole episode. And it doesn't help that when Kilgrave shows up and she's offending this guy, he literally looks like the most evil person ever. Like he's up to no good. And you see Kilgrave trying to save face by saying to Rusty outside, "After 2 days, I already love you like a son." And then it directly cuts to him in the torture chamber basement. And he throws him in the chair and he's like, "Obey me." And he's brainwashing them. And we see the purple face. And he's got them saying mantras that you'd almost hear a Magneto saying about the future is now, will be respected, will overcome their hatred, and that he's talking about the American dream will become reality for every mutant, young and old, and then they'll make the humans pay for how they treated them. So he literally has these kid mutants brainwashed and break into the Capitol building to take care of this governor, and he makes him resign. I love that they named one of the mutant kids here Boom Boom, like Bam Bam from the Flintstones. Interesting choice of name. But Scott finally connects the dots, not by this kid saying that there's a torture chamber in a basement. No, he connects it through the news that the governor that was in Kilgrave's way of what he wanted has resigned. So then he's like, wait a minute, maybe there's something to this. It's cool cool they got to show us so that Kilgrave actually has to put makeup on to cover his purple skin. And I love that when the kid mutants and Kilgrave take care of Scott, they just throw him in the pool. And it's a pretty disturbing image in a kid's cartoon show of him just almost dying, floating in a pool. And he has like near-death visions of Jean. But this is where it's interrupted by Sarah giving him mouth-to-mouth. And Scott finally goes to this torture chamber basement, saves the kids, blows up the monitors, and he says, acceptance must be earned, not forced on people. So sounded like Professor X. And Sarah reveals to Scott that she always knew he was a mutant since they were young. And that he loves that she never made him feel like an outcast. And this is where Scott actually goes in for the kiss here, but they're interrupted by Kilgrave. Thanks, Kilgrave. And then when Sarah almost dies in a fire, this is where Scott's like, not again, because he's imagining losing Jean again. And when Scott saves the day, Sarah offers him to stay with her and the children. And he just totally breaks her heart here, where he's like, part of me does, Sarah, but helping you and the children made me realize there's another place I belong where I'm also needed. So it quickly ends the episode where all the X-Men are just there with their arms crossed waiting for Scott, and then it's revealed that Jean is alive on the Cerebro. But it's interesting because it's the same exact hologram that Scott was looking at before, and they literally use the same clip of him reaching his hand out and saying, I miss you. So it's a very strange ending, but you're excited to see that they're aware that Jean is alive. But the whole episode just feels a little off to me, and in the rhythm of everything going on this season, it's such a faster pace with like, Jean's alive, and everyone knows it now, and it's tough that I wanted to see more reaction to the X-Men of losing Jean, where we only really got Scott. So if we're already getting to resolution of her being alive, I think they could have taken their time more with going into everybody's emotional state, which was interesting to me from the beginning, and then it kind of lasered in on Scott, which is cool, but I think as the storyline of the season, they could have taken their time a little more with that. But again, we know there was also animation issues here, so it's just a strange episode, and I still think it's solid. I still think it works on its own, but this one to me feels less special, like a special X-Men show, and more of like a standard animated superhero show that we see multiple times, stories like this. So I think it's okay, but it's not one of my favorites. So I'm going to give this one a 7.7. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment. I try to respond to as many as I can. Hit that sub button. I'd love any help I can get with this channel, and the support really helps. And I'll see you next time.